Hey everybody in YouTube land, I'm going to do my first metal review ever, so this is probably going to be really awful. But I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to be reviewing the debut album from the California-based band Xanthochroid with their new debut album, Blessed He with Boils. And that is the album cover. You can see that, yeah. This is a very interesting album, considering that these guys are from a place called Lake Forest, California, I believe, and they very much don't sound like your typical American sort of, especially new American metal band. They have a very European sound to them. When I first listened to it, I was like, wow, I couldn't believe these guys were actually from California. They have a very bass and black metal. I would very much say that a lot of black metal fans could like this, but there's definitely elements to their music that are outside of like a typical black metal band like Burzum or Dark Throne. There's folky interludes in this album in between tracks, and there's points in this album where it definitely takes a different turn. I mean, yes, there are a lot of blast beaty songs with distorted guitars that are very sort of, I would say, low, like, they're very well produced, but not as well as, like, say, a Cannibal Corpse album. But despite that, it's not just a normal black metal album at all. There's folky parts, and there's actually songs such as Winter's End on the album, which is one of my favorite tracks, and we had a video for it, so you should probably check it out, that has almost no electric guitar or anything on it. And it's almost a pure folk song that takes a different sort of turn on this album compared to the title track, Blessed He with Boils, which is very much a more black metal oriented style of their sound. This is going to be something either people really dig or really don't. I would recommend this to a lot of people that are into black metal, that are into folk music, because there's a lot of folk on here. There's a lot of acoustic guitars and folk interludes in these songs, which I really like because I'm a fan of a lot of folk metal. I mean, I am wearing an Elevate t-shirt. But I like folk music and I like that sort of thing, but I'm a huge black metal fan, so it allured it to me. Actually on this album, there's parts of it that sort of remind me of a bit of Opeth, like with some of the cleaner vocals, how they interlude in there with the heavier stuff. It very much reminds me of an Opeth sort of sound. So if you're into black metal and Opeth, you might want to check this out. I would very much recommend it to anybody that's into black metal and Opeth. The vocals on this album, there's very harsh, typical black metal vocals, which I like. They tend to get a bit like, if you're into Shagrath of Daimyo or Abbat of Immortal, you'll very much dig these vocals. It has a almost frogginess to it that, for me, over time it gets a little much with the frogginess, but they're definitely awesome black metal vocals on this album. Much better than like early Burzum or anything. I really enjoyed those. There's more guttural, like death metal vocals thrown in the mix. Not to where it's overpowering, to where it sounds like a death metal album, but they're definitely in there and they sound good. They're deep and they're your typical sort of low death metal vocal. They're just placed properly within the songs in the album to where they sound good. But I think one of the highest points of this album are in the vocals, but in the clean vocals. I believe there's two members in this band that do the vocals. The keyboard player and someone else who I cannot remember at this moment. And the clean vocals on here are very interesting on this album. I think they added a complete new element to their sound, which I think if this weren't going to have those clean vocals, it might not be as interesting of an album. The clean vocals very much add to their music, but they're not goofily placed, and they don't feel awkward, but they very much, once again, remind me of an Opeth style. So if you're into that sort of stuff, definitely check this album out. A more interesting thing on this album was the lyrical content. I believe the keyboard player developed a whole world that he wrote about and made, and that's what this album, and apparently their EP before this, is all about his fictional world he made up. So it's all about the lore that he created, and actually inside the disc there is, inside the CD, I'm sorry, on the disc there is a map of the world he created. If you can see that, which is really interesting. And inside this copy, you have a little pamphlet that tells you that he created all this, and that none of it's based in lore that was found before. I really enjoyed that about that. The lyrics, at least, that someone took the time to create a whole story and make it into a song all on their own. So there was no real, inspiration to draw from in that. Because, I mean, you do already have bands like that draw from Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. And, I mean, that's really easy to reflect upon because it exists. And a lot of bands do that already. Not a bunch of bands make up their own sort of stories and legends to create into song form. So I really, really enjoyed that on this album. I thought it was it was just interesting. I just thought it was different. Most bands don't do that, and I wish more would, actually. I think it'd be much more interesting if bands would take the time to create their own world surrounding their music, but I get why bands don't. This album has I think it's like a 58-minute long runtime. It is, to me, some songs get a little long. I think they're a little lengthy. I think they could have been like 3 or 4 minutes shorter. If you're into longer songs, though, you probably won't notice at all. So if you're a fan of a lot of black metal bands, actually, you probably won't even phase you, really. The folky interludes go so well in this music. There's beautiful, beautiful parts in it, and there's dark atmosphere. So I really think that this is a top-notch album that I'm very proud to own this thing. It's probably one of the more, especially out of the more underground bands I have, one of the highlights of it. So if you're a fan of Opeth, you're a fan of black metal, especially bands like Dimmu Borgir, Immortal. If you're a fan of maybe Agalloch in a way, bands in that sort of more new experimental black metal, definitely check Xanthochroid's Blessed He Who Boils out. Thanks for watching this. I really hope it wasn't that awful. And keep it metal, man.